Viewers, welcome to Eyewitness. This is a Trust TV program with an alternative vision, an alternative narrative to the usual story one hears about Nigeria. The normal story is that this is a country where everything is about corruption, where everything is about self-aggrandizement, where everything is about the self-interest of the individual. And the conclusion to that story is that the society is falling apart because everybody is concerned only for their own self-interest. What we do in this program is to show that there can be and there is an alternative vision, an alternative narrative of people who are interested in the public good, of Nigerians who are thinking of service to community, service to the nation, rather than their self-interest and self-aggrandizement. What we do, therefore, in Eyewitness is to seek out Nigerians that are engaged in writing that story, in carrying out that narrative, and in maintaining the struggle to keep Nigeria together. That's what we are here to do. Our guest today is Dr. Kole Shetima, who is the Africa Director of the MacArthur Foundation, and is here to tell us his own story, his own vision about his engagement in Nigeria, with Nigeria, about Nigerians, and how we could see in his life and his work that alternative story. Dr. Kole Shetima, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ibrahim.
It's good to have you on this program, and I thought it would be useful for our viewers to get to know you, the famous Nigerian question. What's your background, education, career, and how did you get to the position you are in today?
That's a very big question, a very something that, well, let me try to summarize it by saying that Kole Shetima is someone from a very humble background, born in a place called Machina, which is like 2-3 kilometers to Niger Republic in Yobe State. Went to a primary school there, went to a community secondary school in Guru, and I always try to remind people that when I went to the secondary school, the community secondary school, you know, we started with a class which was made of a Zana math, and then we graduated to a zinc, and then we graduated to asbestos. It was in Form 4 when we actually saw a block of classrooms. And that was when we actually saw also electricity in our classrooms. Otherwise, we are used to use tele lamp, and there's gas lamp, and then eventually then we got electricity and other things, you know. And then fortunately, I started doing some teaching in a primary school, in Bogo Primary School, which is now in Machina local government. And then eventually got admission to a remedial program. I really wanted to go to university directly. Unfortunately for me, they said I wasn't qualified. I didn't get the required credit. So I had to go and do a remedial program at the University of Maiduguri. And then we eventually got admitted at the University of Maiduguri to do my undergraduate program. After the undergraduate program, then I was lucky to be asked to stay back at the Department of Political Science as a graduate assistant, and then I came to ABU Zaria, where you are one of my professors at that time in Point. And then after ABU in 1990-91, I got admitted at the University of Toronto, where I went to do my PhD program, started teaching there. From there, I went to York University. From York University, went to Ohio University in the US, also taught there, and then eventually I moved back to Nigeria in 1999 at the head of the MacArthur Foundation, and I have been there in MacArthur since then. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a long story, brilliantly compressed. Maybe to start with a human interest story, I read recently a feature article in Daily Trust about your place,
That is
Machina,
rumors. That's people's
and
rumors.
the love and affection you people have for snakes. Can you confirm
We are
that you,
environmentalists. We are
Kole
environmentalists.
Shetima, you...
We are environmentalists. We love animals, and
Yes.
we respect the rights of animals to exist. I think that is all that I can tell you about
But
that
are you
one.
frightened of snakes?
Well, I'm just telling you that we are environmentalists. We support the rights of animals. We rebuild animal rights. So that's what we do.
Okay,
Yeah.
that's great to see Nigerians so devoted to the rights of animals. It's not something very common in our society.
Yes, yeah.
But from Machina to studying in Toronto with that cold, how was the transition for you?
Well, I mean, it's interesting that you mentioned the cold because I remember that I arrived in Toronto probably January 15th or so of 1991. Of course, when I was going to Toronto, everyone said you have to buy a jacket, and I said, okay, when? Of course, went to I think Geologba or one of those places. I bought a jacket. I went to Toronto. I was, of course, had my clothing. I think it was like minus 20 something. Now, if you remember, this week is almost like plus 38, 39, and then transiting into minus 20, minus 25 with this my famous jacket that I went to. Well, I didn't realize that it was a female jacket. So I said, but do women have different jackets than men? They tell me yes, that the difference between a female jacket and a male jacket is the button. So you have to look at the button. One is on the right-hand side, the other one on the left-hand side. So for me, that was probably my first even understanding of a different clothing or female that is worn. Because, in our area, there's no woman will be wearing a shirt or any of those kind of things. So for us even to have a sense of what is bottom, how the bottom is going to look like, and that's how you differentiate a female and a male shirt and other things was it didn't make sense as well. But that was my introduction to winter in Toronto. Very, very cold place, but a very warm set of people. I was fortunate that Professor Julius Ihombare at that time was at the Department of Political Science, so I had to stay for a few days with him before he helped me to get a space where I went and stayed from there then.
Well, I think our viewers have noted when they are going to a cold country and they go to buy a jacket,
Yeah.
they should look carefully
Yes.
what side are the buttons on so that they do not
end up with a female jacket.
embarrass themselves. When I first met you many years ago, you were younger then. I suspect I was younger too.
Yeah.
You were in this group known as progressives. You were moving all over the country, mobilizing, organizing, and I just thought it would be useful for you to tell our viewers, what does being a progressive mean, and what did you do as a progressive? What are your memories?
Well, I think that, at that time, we had a bigger vision about what this country is supposed to be, both in Africa, but in the world, of our citizens. What kind of country do we want to create? A place whereby everybody will have both the environment, the opportunity, and the means to excel themselves, whereby we'll be able to provide for the basic needs and rights of our citizens, because that is really, our vision was something big for the country, for the black race, and if you don't get fixed in Nigeria, the black race is not going to be fixed. So I think that was really what really encouraged all of us to begin to engage ourselves, both at the level of the community, but also at the state and national and international levels as well. Because even when I was right at the time of primary school or secondary school and university, I was deeply committed to my community and work with my community, whether in terms of letter writing, because water was a major, major problem for us at that time. So all the time we're writing about, we need to get water and road to be constructed and other things. So I think that this engagement of both at the grassroots level of community, but also linking up with the national work that we are all committed to in Nigeria. That is Nigeria that is socialist, that provides for the basic rights and needs of its own people and other things. And we were involved in so many organizations at that time. Certainly, in terms of the student movement organizations, I think we were involved in various of the campus prawns, like New Age, New Age, the Political Science Association at the national level, or PYM, and then eventually, when women in Nigeria became a major force in the country, we were all involved in that movement with the Youth Solidarity on Southern Africa. So several of the organizations that were established on the campuses, I think that we are part of those activities as well, because we believe that the country should be better for all of us. The black race should be better than what it found itself in other things. And we ran into several troubles as usual and expected in this kind of movements and organizations, and some of them. But we also had made friends across the country. It's a time when all you have to do is to pick your bag and say, I'm going to go to Lagos. You may not even know where you want to sleep in Lagos. All you know that you're going to Lagos, and maybe you're going to NLC, and someone somewhere has to just have to provide you accommodation, whether they like you, they don't like you, they have space, no space. You don't even have to ask those kind of questions and things. So I think those are the moments when really, nobody took life too serious. We really saw ourselves as comrades and friends and colleagues, and you can travel anywhere and other things. Your car was everybody's car. Everybody was driving it. Late Beckman's car was everybody's car. No one knew where the key was and other things. So those were, very fun memories that we had in terms of, the kind of commitment and the humanity and the dignity that people really had at that time.
Looking back today, that life of public commitment to progress, to socialism, to the interests of the masses, what do you think you achieved? Were you able to push the needle forward, or Nigeria remained as it was?
That's a very big question, and I guess nobody wants to say that actually I have failed or something like that. So let me try as much as possible to say that I think that my sense is that really the country is much better for the work that was done by the progressive forces. But for the progressive forces, I don't know where we'll have ended. Take, for example, the era of the military rule itself. The progressive forces were the one who mobilized at various levels, at the national level, at the international level, pushing for the return to democratic rule and governance in this country, pushing for the rights of people, and pushing for the unions and associations to be respected and people to be accorded their own dignity because they are human beings and other things. So these are not simple victories that were won. They were victories that were won as a result of the collective efforts of several people who really fought for this country to make it a better place. And I think that, but for those efforts, we will not know where we will have been. And we are glad and very happy that at least, we have the space, we have the associations. They may be very weak, that is acceptable, but that at least we have the opportunity to express ourselves, to demand for our rights, and also to push for our own rights. I think that is part of the progress that we have made as a people, as a country.
So you think it was worth it?
No, definitely it was worth it. And I think that, it was worth it also, one, of course, for the country, but also for us as individuals. I think that for us as individuals, it's worth that, we really invested. For me, at least personally, I'm happy that I invested my time and energy and effort in doing something that is just bigger than myself as Kwale Shetima, because I believe that to be a good human being, or try to be a good human being and do something that is better than other things. I think all those, in my view, were part of the, about the process that we learned and we imbibed, and we became, I think we were much better because of what we have done at that point.
Very true, indeed. Maybe on the final question on the progressives and their impact is, why do you explain how that movement has gone down considerably in this country today? We all recollect NANS, the student movement, which was a powerful force. We remembered all these socialist and progressive groups in our university campuses. And today, when you look around, you don't see the same type of movements. How do you explain it?
Well, I will not be able to explain everything, but I know that at least one or two points that I can make on that. One is I think that it's a reflection of also how things have actually iterated in many, many fronts in the country. If you look at so many indicators, indices of things that are happening in the country, you can unfortunately see a progressive decline. And I think that there is a systemic, I think, change and systemic reasons why the decline in the progressive politics that has happened in the country. I believe so. And that systemic decline could be attributed to a number of the changes in the economy, in the politics, both nationally and internationally, globally, that has made those changes have happened. And therefore, I think that the left progressive politics is also part of that unfortunate change that has happened.
The world is moving on. Looking through your CV, one of the things that struck me was the considerable work you have done on gender equality, the liberation of women, and this is a work that you have sustained over the decades. What has been your work in that field, and how has it developed over time?
Well, certainly I think that, many of us came to the women's movement to support the women groups and organizations in the belief that, it's part of our own liberation itself. It's a part of our contribution towards the growth and the development of our society. We believe that women groups and women in particular, that gender discrimination is totally unacceptable. And I think we came with a frame of mind where we believe that majority of Nigerians are oppressed, but women are more oppressed than others. And therefore, for us to have a better society, we need to bring together those forces who have been oppressed together. And therefore, our own participation in this movement is really about, removing that oppression that has happened to us as majority of Nigerians, but women as being specifically oppressed. And I think that that participation, I think that is certainly one of the things that, for me, I think I've become much more enlightened in terms of who I am, what I do, how I relate with my family, with my colleagues and other people as well. I know that it has its cost. A lot of people think either we are not serious people. I remember there was a time I was supposed to go and apply to go to Beijing for the conference, and the vice chancellor of one of the universities wrote and said that, is College Shetima a man or a woman? So you get all those ridicules and other things that happens to you and other things. But I think that we are better for it because we truly believe that this is a very critical and very important part of it. And I think that in my current work that I do and my relationship that I do, I try to try as much as possible to also reflect those values about the need to ensure that more than 50% of our women or people in our society get all the same opportunities and rights that I enjoy as a human being as well. Because I believe that no society will progress if 50% of its own society people do not have the opportunity, do not have the means to be better as well. So I think that even if you just look at it in a purely mercantilist, selfish interest, why would we like to not utilize that 50% of our energy to make it a better society? So I think that even from that pure simple reasoning, I think that there is a reason why we should be committed towards gender equality in our society as well.
Thank you, Dr. Kole Shetima. We now have a much better understanding of your background, your vision, and the things that really agitate your mind and solicit your action. For the rest of the program, we want to discuss philanthropy in Nigeria. I know you describe your profession as a philanthropist, and the first thing that struck my mind is, are you comparing yourself to Dangote or Samad Rabiu, who say they are businessmen and philanthropists? But maybe let's just start from the beginning. When people say philanthropy, what do they mean?
Well, I guess, you know, I think the simplest way to define philanthropy is, you know, a process, a commitment, a vision of giving back to society by individuals in different ways and manners. I'm struggling to define it because part of the challenge also is that when we think of philanthropy, we think of the big names and peoples and other things, you know, and when we always think of them as the organized charitable activities of institutions and individuals. But we don't really think about, you know, what you may call the unorganized, informal charity activities of millions of people that are there throughout their, you know, whatever they do in their own lives and other things, you know. So for me, I think, so I almost try to see that, look, there is a very Eurocentric conception of philanthropy, which is limited to the idea of the organized, institutionalized, big donations and resources that are given to people at the expense of what I consider as critically important, which are the informalized, individualized, charitable activities that people do all the time as well.
Thank you. I think that's a good way of approaching the subject. Nigerians, are we Nigerians philanthropic?
Yes.
What's your view of this?
Actually, I was looking at the data. I believe, although it was dated, and they did a coloring of the generosity, and you find that actually Nigerians are among the most generous citizens of the world. And I think that this generosity, you know, is really reflected in so many ways and so many activities that all and each one of us do in day-to-day basis. You know, as you know, every one of us is essentially of some sort of government and philanthropies of themselves. You know, you may have your nuclear family, but you know that there are 20, 30 other people who also depend on you to go to school, to buy uniform, contribute toward the development of the community in terms of water or electricity or schooling and education and other things. So I think that this unorganized and informalized kind of philanthropic work that Nigerians do is so critical and so important, really, to the maintenance of our society. You know, remember all the discussion about formal economy and informal economy, and one head of state who said that, you know, all the indices of GDP and other things looks negative, but the total economy, the economy has not collapsed. It has not collapsed because of informalized ways in which things are done. And I believe that this informal charitable activities of individuals is really one of the major reasons that our society, despite all our problems, is still able to function the way it is able to function. But for that, you know, generosity and transparency and other things that people are doing all over, everyone is doing, struggling to do, that's one. I think that, but for that, I think that our society will have been different and difficult. Of course, there are the big names, the big people who are organized, they are formalized, and you mentioned some of them, whether it is Anjuma Foundation, T.Y. Anjuma Foundation, whether it is Dangote or Otedola or Samori Bello Foundation. You know, so there are all those formalized ones, but I think that compared to the little people who really do little things, I think that, you know, comparatively, I would say that the formal people, the big people, whatever generosity they are doing is also out of their own big money that they have, compared to the little people who actually are struggling themselves, but still struggling to help other people as well.
Viewers will take a short break. We'll be right back. Welcome back, viewers. I think we've got into the meat of our discussion today, which is philanthropy. And the key element that has emerged in the definition of philanthropy is that you have certain individuals or organizations with a lot of money that engage in significant levels of philanthropy. But Dr. Shetima points out that the fact of the matter, especially for a country like Nigeria, is that most of us who have a certain level of existence are actually all philanthropists and engage in helping our neighbors, helping our relations, the extended family. So, Dr. Shetima, I just read the figures released from ECOWAS last night, stating that you have 3.3 million Nigerians who have been displaced from their homes and their livelihoods in recent years. And what struck me is that people talk a lot about foreign NGOs who come and help people who have been displaced. But when you look at the numbers, this foreign NGOs support, they are always talking of 30,000, 50,000, 70,000. And if we have 3.3 million, it means most of them are not being reached by international organizations. How do you explain this discrepancy?
Yeah, I think that this is clearly an example of the informalized nature of our philanthropic activities in this country and in many parts of the world as well. Because the host communities, that what we usually call the host communities, are really where the majority of the people live. They are the ones who are struggling, despite they are also living in a very incredibly difficult situation. In fact, if you look at the IDP camps, in most cases, they are much, much, much better than what happens in what you call the host communities. The IDP camps may have all the various plaques of various countries. They may have all the water and electricity and other things. But the host community that are really hosting the 2 million plus people do not even have any of those kinds of facilities, but they still are the ones that are really hosting these people and other things. So I think that these discussions around IDP camps and what people are giving and other things, if you look at the reality that the community that really that are struggling, they don't have even anything themselves, are the one probably doing much, much, much more better than what all the attention being paid to the IDP camps and other things are. And which also shows and I think illustrates our earlier conversation about the informalized nature of our philanthropic endeavors, whereby we feel that it's our responsibility really to do these things. We feel that these are our family members, these are people from our village, these are people that we have known in some places and other things, and when they don't have anything, they come to us, and we will, of course, we may be screaming and struggling and other things, but we still have to host them, to provide them, because we have this sense of the responsibility that we owe each other.
Yeah, we've spoken of formal organizations in philanthropy. We've spoken of individuals, but I think there's another sector that we should focus on, which is the religious sector. Sure. Nigeria's religious sector is extremely active, is very large, and engages in a lot of fields. Do you think philanthropy is one of the fields they engage in?
I think they do. I believe they do. If you, I don't know what the numbers are now, but if you look at the data many years ago from the Christian Health Council, Christian Health Council, I think that is the name of the organization. So if you look at the network of the health services that they own in the country, and the health services that they give to people and other things, you can see that this is a very large sector that they are really filling a vacuum that is not provided by the government or international organizations or by individuals. So you can see that there are a number of these religious institutions and organizations that are also doing a lot of philanthropic endeavors, either in terms of health or education, or even taking care of orphans. If you look at a lot of the orphans and other things and orphanage services that are provided for, you find that many of them have some religious inclination of trying to help and support the people and other things. So certainly I think that our religious institutions are one of the major philanthropic endeavors that we have in the country.
Yes, indeed. And I think quite clearly one of the reasons why, as you said earlier, Nigeria hasn't collapsed is that there are many organizations and individuals, many of them based on their religious beliefs, who are ready to work hard to sustain society, to sustain communities. We now want to talk to your own work in MacArthur Foundation. What does MacArthur Foundation do?
Well, MacArthur Foundation is certainly one of the other major foundations in the world. And we in Nigeria, I think we opened our first office in 1994 in Ibadan. When the military left Abuja, then we decided to also come to Abuja in the year 2000. And since that time, we have been doing a lot of work. We have done a lot of work on population and reproductive health. We have done work on maternal health. We have done on girls' secondary education, university education, human rights, so many things they are doing. But I think from 2014, we decided that probably one of the areas that we should really focus on is around accountability and anti-corruption. Because from our point of view, the problem of this country may not necessarily be resources, but how do we spend it? And therefore, whereas we will not be able to, let's say, build all the schools that are necessary, all the roads that are necessary, all the hospitals that are necessary, but if we can contribute towards strengthening the system so that the system can actually use its own resources more effectively, we think that probably that is a better way of our intervention. And that was what led us to think about working around accountability and anti-corruption. And in doing this work around anti-corruption and accountability, at the moment, there are 4 pillars of the work. One is support for investigative journalism, where we support series of newspapers and online, on print and radio stations and televisions and all kind of things that we do. We support the work around criminal justice system, because we think that there are too many of crooks and criminals in this country who get away from the criminal justice system because they have money to buy all kinds of lawyers to come and intimidate, a magistrate who just graduated 3-4 years ago. So we think, okay, how do we strengthen the criminal justice system itself so that at least people will not necessarily be able to just keep justice the way they want? The third area of approach is what we call behavioral change. We think that, yes, it is good to punish those who are criminals, but I think that a lot of the things that we do is also around our behavior, our norms and attitude and other things. So in that case, we are asking ourselves 2 questions. What does our faith says about accountability and anti-corruption? If Muslims and Christians will have a meeting, beginning Muslim prayer, closing Christian prayer, the prayers in between, we don't know what happened. So we ask our faith-based leaders and other things, what does our faith say? The other one is our entertainment industry. We think about, okay, there are a number of people who watch a number of movies and films and other things, but how do we also infuse good values, good characters in those places so that people don't say that monster who have been killing people is the one that is the role model for us, but there are actually good role models in our society who are, despite, they're facing challenges. There's no doubt about that one. But despite the challenges, they are trying to do something good and nothing. How do we promote those good people and nothing? And the fourth approach is really support for civil society groups and organizations. So those are the 4 core elements of the work that we do around this issue of anti-corruption and accountability.
You are quite clear on the second phase of your work, post 2014, 2015, but you are very brief on the earlier phase. Yeah. If you can talk a bit more about what precisely your work involved.
Yeah, so let me take the higher education work, which I think is one of the areas that I really want to talk about, and I love talking about it because, for a democracy to exist, you also need an independent university system. A system whereby institutions of learning are able to deliver, do research, and do what they want to do and other things as well. So I think that one of the areas that we really work a lot, significantly also, is around support for higher education in Nigeria. We chose few universities at that time to support, unfortunately, because we have few resources and therefore we can only do few things. So we supported the University of Port Harcourt, we supported Ibadan, Bayero University Kano, and ABU Zaria. And at the initial stage of the work was really like, brick and mortar kind of work. Do you have access to journals? Do you have even access to internet? Do you have even computer? We even set up a computer revolving fund whereby people could go and apply at that time. Even to buy a phone line, even phone line was a major issue for them, People went and applied and bought a computer. Then next time you go and get a printer. And then, so initially it was this brick and mortar kind of access to laboratories and setting up internet. And then later on at the universities got better, at least the one that we were doing some work, we saw sort of doing some programs. How can we establish programs? For example, at Bayero University Kano, we established the Center for Agriculture, which has become one of the most famous, I think, centers in the continent. It has won many, many awards in the continent, in the world, as a result of the work that they are doing. In Zaria, I think we supported the establishment of a master's program on zoonosis, in veterinary medicine, in Port Harcourt on sustainable development, on petroleum engineering, in Ibadan on energy policy and programs and sustainable development and other things. And also the number of people who have been trained, people who have gone outside of the country to go and train, or people who have been internally trained in those institutions and other things is phenomenal in terms of how many people have really benefited from scholarship and have gone and gotten their PhD or gotten their master's degree and other things is phenomenal and other things. So I'm always very excited to meet someone, and I always meet people on the street and say, I'm a beneficiary of going to this university or X university. And one of the things that we also encourage them to do was also to support the administrative staff, not only academic staff, because universities make the mistake that only professors are important. Yes, professors are important, but if the administration is not run very well, then you know that the transcripts of your students will not be produced on time. And once you don't produce transcript of students, then why will any student will be very happy? Because the people will be applying for university somewhere, and then because some stupid person at the administrative department or admission transcript office had refused to deliberately send the transcript, someone is going to lose their own opportunity to become, who knows, the next Bill Gates or the next whoever the richest person in the world and other things. So supporting administration in the university is also critical and very important, not only in terms of the work. But the work that we did on maternal health is certainly one of the things that I always is very joyful, because we know that, giving birth is something that everyone is looking forward to. But we know that unfortunately our country is now, per capita, actually, we have more maternal death than India, which used to be the country with the highest number of maternal death and other things. And this is scandalous. This is totally unacceptable, because all of us, we are born by a woman. We may have sisters, we may have daughters and other things. But even putting the basic structure to make sure that actually motherhood is joyful, we don't provide those kind of things and other things. And this is one area that I think that we as a foundation are very excited about the work that we have done around maternal health, which is critical and very important. And of course, a lot of the work we have done on human rights are also important part of the contribution, and many of them have also gone towards the democratization process and support for constitutional reform and activities and other things. So, it's very fulfilling, really, to see or to listen to a radio station. I remember there was this radio program on the Voice of America. There was a woman in the matron of one of the hall of the wards in Kano. She was asking about Jijiga, essentially asking how is eclampsia, and the woman response was that Jijiga yadama tarihi, eclampsia is history. So those are the moments that makes you happy. Or when we did the work around feeding program, you go to a school, you see the number of children coming to school just because they are going to get food. This food is not much. You know, if you look at how much really government is spending per child, it's not much. But this food is what is making these children to come to school. And see them in large number come to school. But what breaks your heart is that these children will even divide the food that they have. Put part of it in their pocket, and you ask them, they will say, oh, they want to give it to their siblings who are not at the age of schooling. So those are the moments that you really feel like you are fulfilled, that you are creating opportunity for people also to become better in the future and other things. And I think these are things that, you know, you will be very glad and very happy about.
Yeah, apparently your portfolio is quite large. What type of budget are we talking about? What have you been spending?
So I think that like this year we have $18 million. I think maybe the last 2 years we had like $20 million. But because the program is also coming to an end in 2024, I guess I think that our budget up to 2024 will be about $18 million per annum. Yeah.
That's very good. Who do we need to talk to as Nigerians to make sure it goes beyond 2024?
I think we just have to do the right thing. We have to do the right good work that we should try to do, try to fix the country and make sure that we can run our programs and we have a good and credible election that people will say that, yes, this is a place that, you know, when you put your money, you know that it's going to benefit some people and not a very totally hopeless case. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kole Shetima. This has been a wonderful interview. I think we are leaving very enlightened about the generosity of Nigerians, their capacity to give, their willingness to give to help others. And I think this sense that a lot of people have, that philanthropists are people coming from outside to help poor people, is not very accurate. Some of them do come from outside, but the bulk of the philanthropy that we have in our society is from within the society. Viewers, thank you for following us in this program, Eyewitness. We'll be back next week.